We all like to think we're in the driver's seat, right? That we're in complete control of our own choices. But what if we're not? Today, we're going to dive into Dan Ariely's amazing book, Predictably Irrational, which uncovers the hidden forces that are really pulling the strings. Okay, let's just kick things off with a little puzzle straight from the book. You've got two aspirins, identical ingredients. So why does a 50-cent pill seem to work miracles on your headache, while the 1-cent version does, well, nothing? It doesn't make any logical sense. And right there, that single observation cracks open this huge secret about how our minds work. Sometimes our expectations are way more powerful than reality itself. You know, for the longest time, the whole field of economics was built on one simple core idea, that we, you and me, are fundamentally logical creatures. We weigh the pros and cons, we analyze all the costs and benefits, and then we make these smart, calculated choices to make our lives better. It's a very clean, neat, tidy model of how people behave. But then, folks like behavioral economist Dan Ariely came along and started asking some, let's say, uncomfortable questions. He just looked around at the real world and saw people constantly overpaying for things, underestimating risks, and putting things off until tomorrow. He saw this huge gap between that perfect rational ideal and our messy, everyday reality. So all of this led him to his big idea, the theory of predictable irrationality. What Ariely argues is that our crazy behaviors aren't random at all. They actually follow a script. And once you learn that script, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere. And here's the crucial part. It's not just that we make mistakes. It's that we all tend to make the same kinds of mistakes over and over again. You can almost think of it like there's a computer program running in the background of your brain. These aren't just random glitches. They are predictable bugs in our mental software, and they shape our decisions without us even realizing it. All right, let's look at a couple of super clever experiments from the book that show just how easily our choices get manipulated. These examples are going to pull back the curtain on the hidden architecture of how we make up our minds. So imagine you're planning a honeymoon. You're given these three options. Option A, a trip to Paris with free breakfast. Option B, a trip to Rome, also with free breakfast. And then there's option C, a trip to Rome, but with no breakfast. So which one just immediately feels like the best deal to you? Now, at first glance, you might be thinking, Rome with no breakfast? Why is that even an option? Well, it turns out it has a secret job. See, comparing Paris and Rome is kinda tough. They're like apples and oranges. But comparing the two Rome options, oh, that's easy. Rome with breakfast is the obvious winner. And because that choice is so easy to make, it makes that option feel like the best choice overall, pushing poor Paris right out of the picture. And that, my friends, is the decoy effect in action. Our brains, frankly, hate making difficult choices, so they're always looking for shortcuts. And the decoy, that slightly worse option, gives us that easy win. It's a simple comparison that makes us feel smart. And that good feeling is often all it takes to steer our final decision, whether we're picking a vacation, a cup of coffee, or even a political candidate. Okay, ready for another glitch in our mental software? In one experiment, people were offered a fancy Lindt truffle for 15 cents, or a standard Hershey's Kiss for just 1 cent, and most people chose the truffle. Makes sense, right? A slightly higher price from much better quality. Seems perfectly rational. But then, Ariely made one tiny, tiny change. Now look what happens when the price of each chocolate just drops by a single penny. The truffle is now 14 cents, and the Hershey's Kiss is free. All of a sudden, the preferences completely flip on their head. The free kiss becomes the runaway winner, even though the price difference between the two is exactly the same as it was before. There's just something about that word free. It's like a magic spell that completely short-circuits the rational part of our brain. We stop weighing the pros and cons, we forget the trade-offs, and we just focus on the fact that we're getting something for nothing. And that emotional pull is so powerful, it can make us choose something we don't even really want, just because it doesn't cost us anything in that moment. Now, as you can probably guess, the ideas in this book didn't just stay in a laboratory. They completely exploded into popular culture, and they forced this massive mainstream conversation about the hidden forces that are guiding our lives every single day. I mean, we're talking more than 5 million copies sold. Predictably Irrational basically took these pretty complex ideas from behavioral economics, pulled them out of the university, and dropped them right onto the bestseller list. It really did become a true cultural phenomenon. But of course, no big idea goes unchallenged. And critics have raised some really valid questions. Things like, do these fun little experiments on college students really explain all the complexities of human behavior out in the real world? Or can we really assume these psychological quirks are the same in every single culture? And you know what? That's a fair point. Context always, always matters. So, where does Ariely's work fit into the bigger picture? Well, a great way to think about it is this. If Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is like the dense foundational textbook for the whole field, then Predictably Irrational is the fun, super accessible introduction that gets you totally hooked. Ariely's playful conversational style just makes these big ideas so much easier for everyone to digest. So after all this, what's the bottom line? Why does any of this matter to you in your actual daily life? Look, the key takeaway here is not that we're all doomed to make bad choices. It's actually the exact opposite. By understanding how we're predictably irrational, we can start to anticipate our own mistakes. We can learn to recognize the patterns, to question our own gut feelings, and to even design little systems for ourselves that nudge us toward making better choices. And that really brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. If we know the built-in flaws in our own decision-making, couldn't we build better systems that account for them? I mean, in finance, in healthcare, in public policy, could we actually design a world that protects us from our own worst but most predictable instincts? Now that's the powerful challenge this book leaves us with.